Thank you, Miranda. So we've all heard the expression, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. What you might be less familiar with is when life gives you bread, make beer. Tristram, it's my pleasure to have Tristram Stuart with me today, co-founder of Toast Ale and the food waste charity Feedback. Tristram, what are we drinking here?
This is beer made in the most ancient way that beer has been made. Indeed, beer was invented as a way of preserving calories in grains, bread, that would otherwise be wasted. And what we're doing with Toast Ale is bringing beer back to its true origins. We're getting bread, industrial scale bread that is perfectly fresh, but is going to be wasted, the crusts of sandwiches from sandwich manufacturers, and we're putting that into breweries, combining that with a totally natural and traditional way of making beer, but replacing the grain that you'd otherwise have to grow with waste bread and turning it into craft ale.
And so it's the exact same process.
Yeah.
And when you say ancient, how ancient?
The ancient Mesopotamians invented beer thousands of years ago. The first ever beer made was, in fact, we got this idea from a wonderful brewery in Brussels, the Brussels Beer Project. And they called their bread beer Babylon, named after the ancient Mesopotamians. And Toast Ale is really a way of scaling up that problem. When I first learned that you could make beer with bread, having in my life campaigned on food waste, seen bread waste on an industrial scale all over the world, I said, look, you know, it's great that you're doing it here in Brussels, but I've seen bread being wasted in huge quantities on every continent. Craft beer making is now all over the place. I've spent 20 years building a global food waste movement. Let's bring these three things together and make Toast Ale with locally sourced waste bread all over the world. And so that's what we're doing.
You've alluded obviously to your history with the topic. I mean, where did that start? How did you begin to identify food waste, an issue that you had to tackle?
Oh gosh, yes, that takes me back a while. I've always been...
Not as far as the Mesopotamian era.
Not quite. So I've always been an environmentalist. When I was a teenager, I was actually recycling the food waste from my school kitchens. I used to take it home and feed it to my pigs, the local bakery, the supermarkets that were wasting potatoes because they were the wrong shape or size. I realized that a perfectly good food was being wasted on a huge scale. I started eating it myself. I eventually, got around to kind of launching a one-man campaign on this. This is back in 2002, when supermarkets didn't talk about food waste. They brushed it under the carpet. Government had no policies on food waste. The UN wasn't talking about it. We've now moved so far from that. Food waste didn't used to exist. It's now, there's an SDG, of which I'm a champion, to halve food waste by 2030. You can't be a big food company without having food waste policies. And we're seeing innovation all over the world, entrepreneurs and other innovators coming into the food waste space. But I eventually wrote the book, Waste, Uncovering the Global Food Scandal, launched what became a global movement to tackle food waste, founded a charity, Feedback, that you mentioned. So food waste has been kind of recycling the message of food waste in lots of different ways, has been my whole life, I guess. Toast is just a new way of doing that and telling a story about how much perfectly good food is being wasted, but upcycling that tragedy into something that we can celebrate, into delicious, tasty beer, and also generating money. 100% of our profits go to the charity that I founded. So
I was going to ask a bit about the role of Toast in that. I mean, the statistics that come out on food waste are always sort of astonishing, aren't they? About a third of all food is wasted, and that doesn't necessarily even account some of the food or stuff that's wasted in the production phase of producing the food. So, I mean, what role does Toast play as that sort of story piece that goes out into the market and helps people start thinking about these issues? Yeah,
right. So, I mean, I've been campaigning on food waste, and you have to constantly innovate and tell new stories to keep the press and the public alive. And this is really a way of accessing a whole new audience with our message. Every bottle carries a message, both within it and on the packaging, about food waste and what we need to do about it. We say that bread shouldn't be wasted. Neither should you. Drink responsibly.
Don't tell me what to do, Tristram.
all the crumbs, all the puns are going to come out now, aren't they? It's a way of celebrating the great solutions that are out there. and yeah, turning it into something that is palatable and delicious. But the origin is not with that. It's with anger and pain, actually. I first visited a sandwich manufacturer that was making sandwiches for M&S in 2008, finally got in there, and saw 13,000 slices of day-fresh bread being wasted in that single factory. This was in 2008, food price spike owing to over-demand in wheat in the world market, leaving Pakistanis, who I also visited in the same year, without enough bread to eat. And we were contributing to that problem. So I guess my aim has been to take that ecocidal, sociopathic behavior that our industrial food system has generated and continues to perpetuate the world over, driving species extinction, deforestation, and famine, and turning that into something that instead both builds solutions into that system, generates money for the organizations that are trying to fix that system, and, well, frankly, something that, brings us together around a bottle of beer.
Say that stat again. That's 13,000 slices of bread in that one
factory. Yeah, they were throwing away the end slice and the first slice inside each end slice. 4 slices for every loaf going into that factory, because M&S have such perfection kind of around the display of sandwiches. You never see sandwiches with the end slice or even the one inside. And
that's the best bit.
Yeah, arguably it is, and I wish they made sandwiches with it, and we did try to convince them to do that. Yeah. I've had an ongoing battle with them. I am pleased to say, one of the things that we did at Toast Ale is open source our recipe, because we want to collaborate. We're brewing Toast Ale in 7 countries now, and hopefully that will continue to grow. It will become a global company. But we recognize that some people are going to want to go it alone. So we open sourced our recipe. It's been downloaded 50,000 times. Home brewers, craft brewers, micro brewers, but also industrial brewers have been using it. And M&S copied us. They obviously felt the pain when I campaigned on their bread waste, and they're now producing a bread waste beer of their own, as are Iceland and a bunch of other retailers and brewers around the world. So we're trying to change the whole system, not just be a brand.
I was going to ask you a little bit about the scale of Toast Ale. You mentioned 7 countries. How much take-up have you had of the...
Well, in the UK, we are stocked nationally by Tesco's, Waitrose, some of the big national pub chains. We are generally available. We're still a tiny company, though. We've brewed 1 million slices of bread into beer now. If you stack that up, it would go 1.5 times the height of Everest. But just to put it in perspective, we did a calculation that is kind of approximately true, but it gives you an idea. If, hypothetically, we were able to capture all of the bread currently being wasted in the UK, you could brew almost all of the beer being drunk in the UK using our recipe. That's the scale of waste, and that's why we've done more than just produce our own beer. We've tried to get the brewing industry the world over, and irrespective of whether Toast continues to grow in the way that it is at the moment, continues to generate lots of money, as well as saving bread, irrespective of what happens to our company, we have definitely put the recovery of bread and putting it into the brewing system on the map. Brewers, like I say, the world over are now following this recipe, and that's not going to go away.
What's your biggest challenge?
Well, obviously, this is one tiny, weeny part in the overall effort to put an end to the mass species extinction event that we're in the middle of. I spent 2 weeks on the streets of London with the Extinction Rebellion, feeding all the rebels on the streets every day. Our challenge is, how do these individual actions, great entrepreneurs, great campaigning organizations like Feedback, and the big ones, how do we stop being little isolated great stories and become the total economic and social transformation that we need to stop ripping the heart out of planet Earth? And at the moment, we're still going in the wrong direction, I'm afraid to say.
And do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that ambition cannot be high enough. Transforming the global brewing industry sounds like a big ambition, but it's not enough. Creating a circular economy and materials is a great ambition, but it's not enough. And we have to aim now to come together like mycelial connections and emerge as the superorganism that we really could become. And an ambition less than that isn't really worth fighting for.
That's a very poignant point to finish on, Tristram. Thank you for your time. And hopefully some of those collaborations can take place tonight over a bottle of Toast Ale.
We have a crowdfunder. Anyone can get involved in that. Go onto Toast Ale's website and be part of this drinkable solution to food waste and the ecocidal event.
So, thank you, Tristram. So many of the stories...